Elon Musk is shocked. His company is facing an unprecedented attack. Canada is imposing a 100% tariff on Tesla cars, doubling their cost and effectively squeezing the brand out of the country's market. But that's just the beginning. The government has also cancelled a $66 million contract with Starlink, and investors are panicking and dumping Tesla shares, sending their price down by tens of percent.
In the wake of a growing backlash against U.S. products, British Columbia is targeting one of the president's closest allies. Starting today, the province is removing Tesla chargers and some other products from their rebate program.
Meanwhile, in Europe and the U.S., owners are erasing their Tesla logos to avoid being associated with Musk's policies. And in Germany, sales have plummeted 70%. Vandals are smashing cars around the world. An entire Tesla car dealership was burned down in France. What is this? A temporary crisis or the beginning of the end of Musk's empire? Why is Tesla rapidly losing ground while Chinese giants like BYD and NIO take over the market? Can Musk save the company, or has he already passed the point of no return? We break down all the details in this video. Stay tuned.
Makes no sense. It's so perfect as a great and cherished state. Keeping "O Canada," the national anthem. I love it. I think it's great. Keep it. But it'll be for the state, one of our greatest states. Maybe our greatest state. But
Elon Musk is shocked. His company Tesla was under attack. Canada dealt a powerful economic blow by imposing a 100% tariff on all brand cars sold in the country. This means that the Model Y, which used to cost about $55,000, will now cost Canadian buyers twice as much. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The Canadian authorities took this step for a reason. It is a retaliatory blow to the US trade policy, and Musk himself suddenly turned out to be the main target. He is considered a billionaire friend of Trump, which means he is a strategic enemy through whom he can put pressure on the White House. In a situation where relations between the two countries are already tense, Tesla has become a bargaining chip in a big political game.
why should we subsidize another country for $200 billion? It costs us $200 billion a year. And again, we don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We have more than they do. We don't need anything. We don't need their cars. I'd much rather make the cars here. And there's not a thing that we need. Now, there'll be a little disruption, but it won't be very long. But they need us. We really don't need them. And we have to do this. I'm sorry, we have to do this. Yeah.
But what's worse is that this is just the beginning of the problems. At the same time, Canada terminated a multi-million-dollar contract with Starlink, which was supposed to provide internet to hundreds of remote regions of the country. The deal was valued at $66 million, and now Musk has lost not only a major client, but also an important strategic market. The Canadian government says it will not work with people who are destroying our economy. Meanwhile, investors are panicking. Tesla shares have collapsed by 29% in a month, and experts predict a further decline. There are already reports that the largest shareholders, Vanguard and BlackRock funds, have begun to actively reduce their positions in Tesla, fearing a further collapse. But perhaps the biggest threat is public opinion. In recent months, Tesla has been rapidly losing loyal customers. In Germany, where the Gigafactory plant had recently been producing thousands of cars per week, sales collapsed by 70%. And in the USA, Tesla owners massively cover up or remove logos from their cars in order not to be associated with Musk. On social media, you can see hundreds of messages from former fans of the brand who are now ashamed to drive a Tesla. In California, Model 3 and Model Y cars with glued badges have become commonplace, and owners are coming up with new ways to disguise themselves so as not to attract attention.
He goes on to say, I will shortly be declaring a national emergency on electricity within the threatened area. This will allow the U.S. to quickly do what has to be done to alleviate this abusive threat from Canada. If other egregious, long-time tariffs are not likewise dropped by Canada, I will substantially increase on April 2nd the tariffs on cars coming into the U.S., which will essentially permanently shut down the automobile manufacturing.
However, the problem goes deeper. In several cities in Europe and North America, attacks on Tesla cars are being recorded. Owners report finding cars with broken windows, punctured tires, and sometimes even offensive graffiti. Vandals accuse Musk of supporting right-wing movements, and Tesla is turning into a political symbol that many want to get rid of. But the most notorious incident occurred in France, where unknown people set fire to an entire Tesla showroom, causing multi-million-dollar damage to the company. The authorities have not yet disclosed the details, but one thing is clear: the hatred of the brand has reached its limit. And while Tesla is facing a massive exodus of customers, competitors are already stepping on its throat. The Chinese company BYD has become the largest manufacturer of electric vehicles in the world, surpassing Tesla in terms of the number of cars sold. In China, where demand for EVs is growing rapidly, Tesla has already lost almost half of the market, while local brands are capturing it with incredible speed. The Tesla Model 3, which was once a symbol of the future, is now losing out to cheaper and more technologically advanced Chinese counterparts. But if Tesla's problems were limited to China, Musk might still be able to fight. However, the situation is getting worse in Australia, where sales have collapsed by 30% in 1 month. Analysts note that this is the worst performance for Tesla since 2023. And now, with Canadian tariffs, the situation threatens to escalate into a global crisis. Musk is used to getting away with it. He has proven more than once that he knows how to deal with crises. But now Tesla is losing control. If Canada's tariffs are not lifted, the brand may disappear from this market entirely. If competitors continue to advance, Tesla will lose its status as an industry leader. And if Musk's reputation continues to deteriorate, customers will finally turn away. So will Musk be able to save the company, or are we watching the sunset of Tesla? Tesla found itself in the most serious crisis situation in the company's history. Until recently, it was considered the undisputed leader of the electric vehicle market, a symbol of innovation and the future. Now sales are plummeting and new cracks are appearing on the brand's reputation. But perhaps the main problem of Tesla is Elon Musk himself. In recent years, he has transformed from a cult figure in Silicon Valley to one of the most controversial people in the world. And this has begun to have a direct impact on business. Customers who once lined up for new Tesla models are now either getting rid of their cars or switching to competitors. A new trend has emerged in the United States. Tesla owners, who a couple of years ago were proud to talk about their choice, are now gluing logos on their cars or even completely repainting cars to hide their origin. Videos are spreading on social media where people literally tear off Tesla badges from their cars, not wanting to be associated with Musk and his political views. But image loss is only one side of the problem. The financial side looks even worse. Previously, Tesla managed to maintain high sales through subsidies and benefits, but now the US government is gradually reducing support, and in Europe, new safety requirements for electric vehicles are jeopardizing the future of the Model 3 and Model Y in key markets. This leads to the fact that Tesla is losing its main strength, the ability to sell cars, not at the expense of quality, but through aggressive marketing and the status of the car of the future. Now that competitors are offering cheaper and more technologically advanced models, Tesla has suddenly found itself in a position of catching up. The Chinese company BYD has already left Tesla behind, becoming the world's largest manufacturer of electric vehicles. Its models offer more features, better build quality, and most importantly, a more affordable price. In China, Tesla has already lost almost half of the market, and now threats are looming over Europe. New Chinese brands such as NIO and XPeng are actively expanding in Germany, France and the UK, offering cars that surpass Tesla not only in technical characteristics, but also in terms of comfort. 5 years ago, Tesla could afford to be a monopolist and dictate the terms, but now the market belongs to those who offer the best product. Elon Musk himself is not helping the situation. In recent years, his public statements have become even more strident, and his political preferences have become even more obvious. This has alienated many customers, especially in Europe, where Tesla has long been considered a symbol of progressive thinking. In Germany, sales have fallen so sharply that the Gigafactory plant in Berlin has already been forced to reduce production. According to rumors, the management of Tesla is considering the possibility of temporarily closing some workshops due to low demand. This is a disaster for a company that had recently planned to triple production at this plant. Things are no better in America. Despite the fact that Tesla is still a popular brand among car enthusiasts, it is losing the loyalty of key customer groups. Young consumers who used to be Tesla's main customers are now choosing other brands such as Rivian or Lucid, which offer fresher designs and better quality. Meanwhile, in the secondary market, more and more owners are trying to sell their Teslas, but they are faced with the fact that prices for used electric vehicles of the company are rapidly falling. But perhaps the most alarming signal for Tesla was the behavior of investors. Previously, the company's shares were considered highly promising and investors were willing to suffer temporary losses for the sake of future growth, but now the situation has changed. After Canada's announcement of a 100% tariff on Tesla, stocks began to fall. But the real blow came after news of sales failures in Europe and China. Some large funds began to exit Tesla shares, which led to a collapse in the value of the company. According to analysts, if the situation does not change in the coming months, Tesla may lose another 15 to 20% of its capitalization, which means that the company will no longer be able to afford to take risks as before. The Tesla crisis is not just a temporary problem, but a systemic failure in the business model. In the past, the company was able to compensate for the low margin of cars through subsidy programs and the sale of environmental loans, but now these sources of income are drying up. With each passing quarter, it becomes more difficult for Tesla to maintain its status as an innovation leader when competitors offer more advanced technologies and the latest batteries. However, the most dangerous challenge lies ahead. If Tesla does not take decisive action, it may lose the trust of the market completely. Critics of the company are already saying that Musk has been distracted by other projects for too long. SpaceX, Neuralink, Twitter, and missed the moment when the electric car market began to change. While he was busy with his ambitious ideas, Chinese and American competitors reached a new level, and now Tesla no longer looks like an untouchable technology giant. The question now stands like this: will Elon Musk be able to stop the company's decline? Or is this the beginning of the end for Tesla? One of the most unexpected consequences of the crisis was the rise in prices for cars and components. Since the production of new cars had practically stopped, dealers began to record a sharp shortage, which led to a jump in prices. Cars that used to cost $30,000 to $40,000 were now sold for $50,000 to $60,000, and some models almost doubled in price. Buyers, fearing further growth, began to hastily buy up the remaining stock, which only accelerated the process of exhaustion of cars in car dealerships. This also affected the used car market. Suddenly, used cars were valued almost more than new ones, and auctions recorded record prices for used vehicles. Car-sharing companies, cab services, and car rental companies were faced with a difficult dilemma. They could not renew their fleets, and rising prices made renting cars less affordable for customers. In a number of cities, this led to higher prices for cab services and longer waiting times for cars, which caused a wave of discontent among the population. Meanwhile, the White House found itself in a most difficult position. The Trump administration, which had previously confidently stated that tough measures against Mexico would only bring benefits, now found itself facing a massive crisis that threatened to collapse the country's economy. Political pressure on the president has increased dramatically. Labor unions, which had previously supported his trade policies, now demanded an immediate solution to the problem. Within the government itself, divisions began to emerge. Some advisors urged concessions to minimize the damage, while others insisted on continuing the pressure, believing that Mexico would sooner or later break under economic oppression. However, Mexico was not going to back down. The country's authorities made a clear statement: supplies of automobile components would not resume until the White House lifted the tariffs. Moreover, the Mexican government began to actively seek new markets, negotiating with China, the European Union, and Latin American countries. This meant that even if the US decided to lift the tariffs, the consequences could be irreversible. Suppliers who had left for other markets might not be able to return to their previous trade volumes with America. Against this background, negotiations between Washington and Mexico City began with serious complications. The American side hoped to reach a quick agreement, but the Mexican representatives took a tough stance, demanding not only the complete abolition of tariffs, but also guarantees that such a policy would not be repeated. Negotiations reached an impasse, and meanwhile the crisis continued to gain momentum. The stock market was again hit hard. Shares of automakers lost more than 50% of their value, and analysts began to talk seriously about the possibility of a new wave of bankruptcies. Banks, which had previously financed the automobile industry, began to refuse new loans, fearing that the industry might never recover from the blow. The situation was approaching a tipping point. If a solution is not found in the coming weeks, the US economy could face its biggest crisis in decades. The automobile industry, which for many years had been a symbol of American manufacturing had now become its weak point, and both governments were held hostage to their own decisions. The White House faced a dilemma: give in and admit a mistake, or continue the pressure and risk even greater economic losses. The question was not who would win the confrontation, but how destructive it would be for both sides. The economic confrontation between the US and Mexico had by this point escalated into a severe crisis that affected not only the auto industry, but the entire North American economy. Millions of jobs were jeopardized, car production came to a halt, car prices soared, and the stock market experienced one of its worst declines in decades. But what was most alarming was that even if the crisis was resolved now, the effects of the conflict would remain for years, if not decades. Tesla is facing the most serious crisis in its history, but if earlier the problems were related to competition and public opinion, now the situation threatens the very existence of the company. The crisis, which began with falling sales and reputational blows, has escalated into a system failure that could destroy Tesla from the inside. Elon Musk is no longer in control of the situation. Decisions that only recently brought billions to the company are now working against it. More and more investors and analysts are wondering, does Tesla have a wandering, but are we witnessing the downfall of once great brand? At the moment, Tesla's profit is falling due to lower sales and shrinking margins. Previously, the company could afford aggressive discounts and bonuses for customers in order to maintain demand, but now it is becoming unprofitable. In the first quarter of this year, Tesla recorded its lowest profit in the last 5 years, despite an increase in the overall share of electric vehicles in the market. This means that the company is losing money even in conditions of increased demand for EV, which looks like an alarming sign. A few years ago, Musk said that Tesla will make a profit through technology, not through volume, but now the situation is unfolding differently. The company's technology is no longer leading, and volumes are falling. One of the main blows to Tesla came from within. The company began a wave of layoffs, which affected both factory jobs and key engineers. Sources report that Tesla lost up to 15% of its employees in 2024, which is a serious setback for a company that was only expanding earlier. Tension reigns within the company. Employees complain of congestion and deteriorating working conditions, and former engineers who leave Tesla already being hired by competitors BYD, Lucid and Rivian. Musk has always been a proponent of a tough corporate culture, but now it's starting to play against him. Employees who used to be willing to work 100 hours a week for an idea are now leaving, realizing that the idea is losing its meaning. The problems are getting worse due to the lack of components. From the very beginning, Tesla has relied on vertical integration, manufacturing many key parts internally. This gave it an advantage in 2020 to 2021, when the global automotive industry was suffering from a shortage of chips and batteries. However, now this strategy is turning into a disaster. While competitors are signing new contracts and creating supply chains, Tesla has found itself trapped in old schemes that no longer work. Because of this, deliveries of new models are delayed and production prices continue to rise. The company is already talking about possible disruptions in the release of the Model 2, the promised budget electric car, which was supposed to be Tesla's new flagship. But even if Tesla solves all production problems, it will still have to face the main threat of change in the global electric vehicle market. If 5 years ago Tesla was almost the only serious player in this field, now the world has changed. BYD, NIO, Rivian, Lucid, Volkswagen, Hyundai and other companies produce electric vehicles that bypass Tesla in many ways. Batteries have become cheaper, technology is developing faster, and Tesla no longer looks like the only alternative to gasoline cars. Automotive analysts are already saying that Tesla missed the moment when it needed to relaunch its lineup. The Model S and Model X are already obsolete. The Model 3 and Model Y are still holding on, but they are rapidly losing ground. The only new development of Tesla Cybertruck turned out to be not the product that the market was waiting for. Its ambiguous design, safety issues, and overpriced price made it more of a niche experiment than a mass-market car. If earlier Musk could create hype around new models and provide record pre-orders, now even the most devoted fans of the company are not ready to buy a raw product for a lot of money. Another problem was Musk's strategy of lowering prices, which in the past allowed Tesla to remain competitive. However, now this method is working against the company. The decrease in the cost of cars led to the fact that many buyers began to wait for new discounts, taking their time with the purchase. This has become a trap. The more Tesla reduces prices, the less people are willing to pay for cars at current cost. As a result, even lowering prices does not help boost sales, which means that the company has fallen into a vicious circle. Elon Musk is trying to keep the situation under control, but even his influence on the market has weakened. He is no longer the only leader in the industry, and his decisions are no longer perceived as infallible. Many experts say that Musk will have to resign as head of Tesla if the company wants to maintain its chances of survival. Investors are increasingly talking about the need for new leadership that will be able to adapt the company to new realities. But even if Musk leaves, will Tesla be able to regain its position? Or has the company already passed the point of no return